Hi everybody. The topic of the day today is Viognier, which is a white grape commonly known for being from the Rhône Valley in France. The actual origin of the grape is highly debated. Some people actually think it's from Croatia, some people think it came from the north of Italy, but there is a lot of people who think it is from the Rhône Valley. It is thought to be related to the French grape Mondeuse Blanche, but it's not really clear whether Mondeuse Blanche is the parent of Viognier or the kind of daughter or son, if you want to call it that, of Viognier. So it's still not really clear, but it kind of does make sense because Mondeuse Blanche is one of the parent grapes of Syrah, which is always commonly paired with Viognier, so there might be some truth in that. Another theory that some people have is that Viognier is from the Rhône Valley and that it was named after the French town of Vienne, which is at the top of the Rhône Valley. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but just thinking more about the finished wine, certainly it is a grape that you would associate with the Rhône Valley, regardless of whether that's where it came from. So you will often find Viognier used in Rhône Valley blended wines. And in the Northern Rhône, where it's mainly Syrah that's produced, Viognier is added to the blend, but very small quantities. I mean, at the very most, you would have about 20% Viognier in a Côte Rôtie wine, but most producers don't really tend to add more than 5 to 10% of Viognier to Syrah. So it might seem really weird to you to think, why would Viognier, as a white wine, a white grape, be added to a red wine? But the main reason that Viognier is blended with Syrah is because it's a very aromatic grape, so it can really add a kind of floral aromatic dimension to a red wine. And also, weirdly, even though it's a white wine, it tends to deepen the colour of the finished wine. It's a weird thing, but basically the natural pigments in red wine, which tend to be known as anthocyanins, those natural pigments, when they react with some colourless compounds that certain white wines have called flavonoids, that reaction between the two deepens the colour. And Viognier is one of those white grapes that tends to have quite a lot of those colourless compounds, and that's why it tends to get used a lot with Syrah to deepen the colour. So that's kind of why, in case you were wondering what would be the reason that people would add Viognier to a red wine. But there are parts of the Rhône Valley where Viognier is actually not a blending grape and it's the only permitted grape. And those two areas of the Rhône Valley, first one really famous is Condrieu, which is a specific Viognier special area where they only make wine with Viognier. And then also there's what's called a monopole, which is Château Grillet. And Château Grillet is 9 acres of land, all owned by the same people, and they only use Viognier as well. So you can find just single varietal Viognier in the Rhône Valley as well. And those wines are considered very high quality. So if you ever are looking to buy a Condrieu or a Château Grillet, you would definitely pay a premium for it. So what is the actual grape like? Well, Viognier as a grape is actually quite difficult to grow. It's very susceptible to powdery mildew and it has quite a small window for picking. So once it's reached its ripeness, you have to really make sure you harvest it straight away because it has a tendency to become overripe very, very quickly. The colour of the grape also is interesting. It's more of a yellowy colour than a green colour. So that's one of the things that makes it quite distinctive. If you ever see a picture of Viognier grape bunches, you'll notice it's more a yellowy colour. And then in the finished wine, the really big kind of distinction that you'll find in a Viognier is that it's very aromatic and there's a lot of white flower aromas. So think of chamomile and jasmine and that kind of thing, you know, honeysuckle, those kind of floral aromas. And also you'll get a really oily, rich texture in the mouthfeel on the palate. It should be quite an oily texture when you drink the wine. Quite honeyed flavours, stone fruits, that kind of thing. Not that different to the other day when I was talking about Chenin Blanc. It's got similar fruit components in terms of the flavour, but I would say more aromatic because that's the thing that really stands out about Viognier. So looking to other areas where they produce Viognier other than France, the Rhône Valley, I mean, within France, there is a lot of Viognier from the Languedoc-Roussillon area, but if you were looking in the New World, you would find Viognier in California. Other parts of America would be like Washington, Virginia, Texas. They all have their own Viognier. Partly how it became so big in California was in the 1990s because there was just so much Chardonnay around, all those big oak Chardonnay, those big oak Chardonnays that people wanted something a bit different. So Viognier became quite big in the American market in the 1990s as a bit of a competitor to Chardonnay. And also in Australia as well, you can get really great quality Viogniers. One area I can think of that's really known to have Viognier plantings is the Yarra Valley. Obviously, as I often talk about with different grape varieties, you will get more fruit ripeness in some of these really hot climates of New World. So you would expect more kind of like riper fruit, more honey flavors, all those kind of things that you would get always a bit more ripeness of in New World compared to if you were trying a Rhône Valley Viognier. So it's certainly not really a grape that I drink very often, but I think it's worth knowing about it and looking out for it if you are learning about wine, because definitely within the realms of Rhône wine, it's a really significant grape. So let me know if you've ever tried an interesting Viognier. I would love to hear about it and where you got it from and what country it was from. Thanks.